Good afternoon. I'm back. And I'm here to introduce a person who I called inimitable in my last talk, Shail Kumar. The only reason I said that was because the education, the E, the middle E, the first E of steel is probably the strongest element in this conference, and it has such incredible content that I wouldn't be torn from this session. And a credit to that really goes to my friend Shail Kumar. Really, round of applause for him, man. Please put in a... I may not have the opportunity to express this on another forum or another time, because I'm actually very mic shy. So here goes an introduction. He's a former senior administrator, University of California at Berkeley and UC San Diego. Shail has over 20 years of leadership experience in for-profit and non-profit sectors. Most recently, he was Senior Executive Director for Development at University of California, San Diego, where he was responsible for development for 7 colleges and schools. Prior to that, he held advancement management positions at UC Berkeley. Prior to that, Shail was the co-founder and CEO of 2 startups and held corporate strategy, business development, planning, operations, and financial management roles in Fortune 500 and Silicon Valley-based high-tech firms such as Applied Materials, Lam Research, and FMC Corporation. In addition, Shail served as the president of IIT Foundation, was a co-founder of the Pan-IIT alumni movement, and for close to 14 years was a volunteer leader in the Indian Institute of Technology Alumni Network. He has an MBA from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University, Bloomington, and a bachelor's in engineering from the one and only IIT Kharagpur. Shail.
Thanks, Pradeep, for the wonderful introduction. As Pradeep mentioned, I'm also the co-leader of the education program track at this conference. And before I start with this panel, I want to just give you a quick overview of the 5 exciting panels, 28 great speakers, and unlimited inspiration you're going to receive in these education program track. In addition to today's panel, there's a plenary session on MOOCs, a massive open online course, that's tomorrow morning, innovation that is transforming education. We have a session on early and K through 12 education, transformative models for large-scale impact. Tomorrow afternoon, we have a session on professional and personal development in a competitive, global, and networked world, new models and new frontiers. And we recently finalized a post-conference workshop on the IIT brand and its future. And I want to thank Consul General Harish and Chancellor Katur for making such a strong plug-in for world-class research universities, the future of higher education in India, and the IIT brand, which we are in some ways going to cover in all of these various panels. Each of these panels has outstanding thought leaders, leading experts who are chancellors, presidents, provosts, deans, faculty members, entrepreneurs, NGO leaders, and business executives. So I hope you will attend, just like this one, other education program panels and be informed and inspired. Coming back to this panel, the future of higher education. India has come a long way since 1947. And if you look at some of the numbers, gross enrollment ratio has gone up from 5% in the 1980s to close to 13% in 2007. Enrollment in higher education has increased from 3.2 million to, according to Consul General Harish, 26 million people. But much has to be done in higher education in India. And there's so much to talk and do in this area. But we have focused in this particular panel to look at this issue of world-class research universities. Because if you look at IITs, IIMs, AIIMS, and few additional Indian institutions that have established themselves as global brands, and their alumni are trailblazers in their respective fields and brand ambassadors for their respective institutions in India, none of these institutions are in the top 200 of the world-class research rankings. And Consul General Hari mentioned that. The question on the table is, why are world-class research universities important? Are they important to India and the society? Could IITs and existing institutions transform themselves to become world-class research universities? Are new universities better positioned to fill this gap? What changes in the funding model, governance, or policies that have to happen to make this world-class research university a reality in the next coming decades? We have an outstanding panel that will provide a multi-dimensional perspective to these questions. And to make it interesting, each panelist has been given a very specific question that is unique that they will address. So hopefully by the end of this first round of presentations, you'll get a very comprehensive view of what's happening in India and what's possible and what are the opportunities and challenges. I'd like to introduce the speakers in the order they will be speaking. Prabhat Hajela, who is on my left. He's the Provost and Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RP at Troy. As the Provost, he is responsible for all academic portfolio at the university. He has published 275 papers and articles and is an author and editor of 4 books. He received his undergraduate degree from IIT Kanpur, master's degrees from Iowa State University and Stanford University, and PhD from Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming Prabhat. Devang Thakur is the Director and Professor of Chemical Engineering at IIT Bombay. He has published over 90 papers. For his research achievements, Devang has been accorded several prestigious awards, which include the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize and the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship. Devang did his BTech from IIT Delhi and his PhD from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Rakesh Chaki, he is a co-founder of Ashoka University, one of the newest universities in India. Rakesh graduated from IIT Delhi and joined Schlumberger in early 1992. He is currently Vice President Sustaining, where he is responsible for the product lifecycle management of Schlumberger Technologies. Chitta Baral, he is a professor and past department chair of computer science at Arizona State University. And he has contributed in the establishment of NICER at IIT Bhubaneswar and the first Jesuit university in India, the Xavier University at Odisha. Chitta got his BTech from IIT Kharagpur and MS and PhD from University of Maryland. And he is the co-collaborator in this whole education program track. Sudhir Jain, he is the director of IIT Gandhinagar, an internationally renowned scholar in earthquake engineering. He has been on the faculty of IIT Kanpur since 1984, from where he is presently on leave to serve as this first director of IIT Gandhinagar. Sudhir holds a Bachelor's of Engineering degree from IIT Roorkee, even though he wrote University of Roorkee. I think his old alma mater.
Precise.
And master's and doctoral degree from Caltech. Devesh Kapoor, he is the Madan Lal Sopti Associate Professor for Study of Contemporary India and the Director for Center for Advanced Study of India at the University of Pennsylvania. A prolific writer, he is currently completing 4 co-authored books, including one that is titled Indian Higher Education, a Missed Opportunity, ? Devesh received his BTech from IIT BHU and MS from University of Minnesota and PhD from Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton. I want to acknowledge 2 volunteers. Are they here? Not here. They'll be soon here. Shweta and Michelle will be taking your questions. So if you have any questions, they have flashcards and you may want to write your questions and give it to me. At the end of each of the presentation, after all the panelists have spoken, we will be taking your questions. So we want it to be as interactive as possible, because this really is about having a thoughtful dialogue on this important topic. So with that, Prabhat, I'd like to start with you. As a provost, you're sustaining and enhancing a world-class research university. Could you tell us, does India need world-class comprehensive research universities? If so, why? And what does it take to become a world-class research university?
Well, thank you, Shail. Is the mic on? You can hear me in the back? That's good. Okay, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here in this panel in the company of distinguished colleagues. I look forward to an engaging discussion, I think, on a very important topic, something that is of concern to the government of India as they grapple with the issue of providing a quality younger generation and to prepare them adequately to compete on the global stage. So, Shail's question to me really is about, do we need world-class comprehensive research universities? And then what does it take to become one? I think there are really two components to this question if I try and take it apart. The issue of world-class, and then what I mean by a comprehensive university. So let me take those in order. There is a 2009 World Bank report that looks at world-class research universities and has outlined some characteristics that are common to each of these. First, I think the universities draw talented faculty and students from all quarters of the world and all segments of society. The faculty and students pursue a research agenda of global import. Their research is important. It is recognized not just within higher education, but by outside agencies as well, and has a role in actually influencing public policy. These are universities that have been given the freedom to develop a strategic vision, innovative practices, and their internal governance structures are such that they are nimble and agile. They can implement new programs quickly. I think members of this panel will visit various aspects of these characteristics throughout this conversation. So let me then move to the second part of the question, which has to do with the comprehensive nature of a university. And to do this, let me just borrow a page from history as to the evolution of universities as they exist today. Going all the way back to the 11th century and the founding of Bologna University. This was founded as the first autonomous degree-granting institution in the world. It was free of any control from royalty or religious orders and had the very specific task of educating students about the Roman laws of the people, a very mission-oriented university, so to say. Universities since then that have grown out of Protestant and Catholic schools have really targeted on specialized fields of instruction, training large number of people in fields such as becoming clerics, lawyers, civil servants, physicians, not unlike a lot of the universities that you see today. In the 19th century, the objective of universities actually evolved from teaching a regurgitation of knowledge to encouraging productive thinking. And I think if one looks back at this period of development, humanism played a very important role in this transformation process. As humanist professors joined the faculty, there was a greater focus on students being able to write and speak with distinction, to be critical in their analysis of written texts, and in general, learn to live honorable lives. So you begin to see that there is a focus on ethics in education developing over this period. A critical mindset that evolved at this period has really influenced education and scholarship over these years. So in talking about a comprehensive education, I think I would draw your attention to the articulation of something I refer to as the whole of knowledge by John Henry Cardinal Newman more than 150 years ago in 9 lectures that have become a timeless classic referred to as the idea of a university. Cardinal Newman actually extolled the idea of a knowledge continuum, to advocate really the amalgamation, the integration of disciplines around 7 liberal arts or liberating arts of the medieval university. For his statement, the concept of liberal arts went beyond just the contemporary view of liberal arts as including history, humanities, social sciences, and so on, but included natural sciences like mathematics and biology. And Cardinal Newman understood that it was through understanding and working across disciplines, an interdisciplinary perspective, that the new might be created, that novel ideas actually being developed, and fresh solutions emerge. So his was and is today a comprehensive, even radical approach to education, and has influenced what today we regard as a comprehensive university. So fast forward to the present day context, I believe that among the attributes of a comprehensive university, the commitment to excellence in humanities, art, social sciences must exist side by side with a focus on your sciences, natural sciences, physical sciences, engineering, and medicine. I joined Rensselaer 23 years ago. The university today is not what it used to be at that time. It has evolved itself. It has remained faithful to its original mission of being a leading university in engineering and science, not unlike a lot of universities of distinction in India, but has also managed to interweave in its curriculum a very comprehensive approach to education. And this was not without purpose or cause either. I can attest, having seen several generations of students move across our campus, that the students who come in today are different. They are indeed prepared and ready to take on a comprehensive approach to education. They bring with them a host of interests beyond those that focus on their chosen fields of study. These students are not prepared to discard their personal interests in the rubble of discarded talent and passions. I think it is our job in the universities to help them develop these interests and passions so that they become better rounded and, by extension, more effective at what they choose to do. So this will require greater flexibility in how we teach our students. This flexibility is the hallmark of comprehensive institutions, and if we are to move in the direction, this is a focus that we have to maintain. So coming back to the question of why we need to build world-class research universities, on the one hand, I believe that emerging economies need the presence of such institutions to develop, nurture, and retain talent that will drive innovation and growth over periods of time. The real question before us is whether our resources exist to get to where we want with comprehensive world-class universities, because let there be no misconception. World-class research universities are neither inexpensive nor are they trivial as a process of creation. So with that, let me stop here and listen to the comments of my fellow panelists. I'm sure we'll come back to a number of these issues later.
Thanks, Prabhat. Devang, several IITs have added business schools and law schools to their core base of expertise in engineering and sciences. IIT Kharagpur is also planning to establish a medical school. Should IITs strive to become world-class comprehensive research universities, and what are the opportunities and challenges in making it happen?
Thanks, Shel. I think that is a question that has been debated a lot within the institutes. Again, let me just sort of back up a little bit. Judging by, the topic is, should IITs become world-class, comprehensive research universities? In many ways, the IITs are already moving in that direction. And should they become such universities? I think the key to that is, how will they serve the nation and the society at large as they move towards that goal. The role of a university is to, as we heard this morning from President Katur, is to, I think the primary goal is to actually produce the right kind of graduate who will serve the society, create knowledge through research, but also to be a repository of knowledge and expertise to provide policy advice and consulting. If you look at the IITs, when they started, the blueprint for the IITs was the Sarkar Committee report, formulated pre-independence, and that committee had some of the most eminent scientists of the day, including Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, on it. And one of the major recommendations was that in addition to science and engineering, humanities should be a very integral part of the education. So all IITs have had humanities and social sciences as part of the institute from their origin. If you look at the word research, when IIT started, the focus was mainly on teaching. But this was not because the faculty who were hired did not have research credentials, but this was because facilities were very limited. Just yesterday, my colleague Ravi Sinha was mentioning that Professor Katti, who was actually a faculty member in MIT, was attracted back as one of the first faculty members to join IIT Bombay in 1958. IIT, the campus hadn't come up, and in fact, the Consul General of India was instrumental in trying to convincing him to go back. The IIT was set up in a temporary location, Sasmira in Worli, and so when Professor Katti landed up, there was obviously no lab for him, and there was no postgraduate course. So he immediately started an MTech course and converted one of the toilets into a lab. So, what my point is that urge for doing research was there from the start, but the point is that resources were extremely limited. I joined IIT Bombay in 1987 after having spent, a few months in Kanpur before that. And when I joined, the situation was similar, that there were few research, everyone was highly qualified. Many of my colleagues, in fact, some 6 people joined roughly around the time that I did, and then there were many people senior to me who were there. They were all PhDs from very reputed universities, all, eager to do research, but it was difficult. And the 2 resources that were missing, there were no PhD students, and there was no research grant available. Over time, things have, of course, changed. Today, there is more funding available. To just give an example, at IIT Bombay, our annual research grants that we get are roughly $50 million. That sounds meager in the US, but it goes a reasonably long way in India, particularly if you want to hire students. So if you look at the IITs currently, I would say they are well on their way to becoming world-class research universities. They, in fact, satisfy almost everything that Professor Hajela said a little while ago based on the definition provided by the World Bank. We have absolutely outstanding students. Earlier, the story was they had really outstanding students only at the BTech level, but this is no longer true. We have really very good students at the master's as well as at the PhD level. Our faculty is now comparable to almost any university that I visit here. We have faculty who have, done their studies in the best of universities everywhere in the world. I was telling somebody this morning that the electrical engineering department at IIT Bombay has 4 President's Gold medalists teaching there. So we really have outstanding people on the faculty. They're all enthusiastic about research. They are doing research. But there are limitations based on how much resource we can put in. If there's time, maybe I can give a few examples of how things are moving. There is now a thinking that obviously you cannot put a huge amount of money in every possible research area. So the principal scientific advisor to the government of India, okay, I'll just wrap up in 1 minute. He thought that one very important area that should be built up was the area of electronics, particularly hardware, making chips and so forth. Now, this is an extremely expensive area to do research in. So, about 7 years ago, 2005, the government of India put down the largest research project in the history in a university, when they put down 100 crores for building a microelectronics laboratory, one at IIT Bombay and another at Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. And then now the second phase of 84 crores has come in there. In addition, once these facilities were put up, Applied Materials, Shail's old company, donated tools worth $12 million in that laboratory. And there are 30 engineers of Applied Materials stationed in IIT Bombay. So when I look at this particular area of microelectronics, it has really built up, and I would say that the facilities that we have at IIT Bombay are now comparable to the best in the world. We have 25 faculty members working in this area, again, with outstanding records, with experience working at Applied Materials, at Intel, at IBM, and so forth, before coming. And certainly, if you look at the kind of output in terms of publications in the top conferences and journals, there are, there's a very high productivity. So I would say broadly that IITs are indeed moving in this direction of becoming research universities. They're also becoming much broader. The humanities and social sciences are increasing in scope. Many other disciplines are coming in. I think this is important, and I'll just wrap up by saying that we need this kind of approach to a comprehensive education because the kind of problems our students will face when they go out. They are no longer only science and engineering. They do need a much broader background to be able to address the issues that they will face. And we are working internally to ensure that they do get this kind of a broad exposure. In addition to a major, most students end up doing a minor in an associated area. And, they could be in many different things. But I think both of these trends are already happening, and they are greatly desirable and useful for going forward.
Great. Thanks, Evan. Rakesh, as the co-founder of Ashoka University, you're in the front seat of establishing one of the newest universities in India. Could you share with us the opportunities and challenges in establishing a new university in India?
All right, so while I set this up, I have to say that I'm a little bit of an anomaly on the panel here because I am the only non-academic. I actually gave up after taking one degree, unlike the rest of the panel here. I did my undergrad from IIT Delhi and joined Schlumberger. And I've actually been with them ever since. And the second one is that I'm the only one who actually drove to the conference. I'm a local, so I didn't have to fly unlike the rest of us here. So I represent, today on the panel, I represent Ashoka University. This is a university that is actually going to enroll its first batch in August of 2014 and is coming up in Rajiv Gandhi Education City in a place called Kundli, very close to Delhi. The vision that we have is to build one of the finest universities in the world. I think Dr. Khator this morning actually mentioned that there are a few things that you have to do. And one of them is not accept mediocrity, right? So we are actually going to try and make sure that we live up to the expectation of excellence. And we're going to do that founded on the principles of liberal education, which is actually a little bit of an anomaly also, if I can say so. Despite some of the courses that Professor Khakar just mentioned, very few and actually very little importance is given to the breadth of learning in India as a concept. So I think that's another thing that we are planning to do. We already have existing collaborations with key Western colleges, whether it's Penn Engineering, Carleton College, Sciences Po in France, and also a collaboration with the University of Michigan. As a precursor, we've actually started something called the Young India Fellowship. This is actually started in 2011. It's a very interesting concept, and in fact, the press has been kind to us, and they call it the Rhodes Scholarship of India. What we are trying to do is to take people who've already done their undergrad education, put them through a course of 1 year of intensive contemporary studies, things that are actually useful in the modern world. Rather than focusing on archaic and some of the things which are probably not very useful in what is happening in the world, we are actually focusing some of the brightest minds of the country on problems that actually exist and try and educate them about that. So this is the vision that we have for the Young India Foundation. The program started with 57 scholars in 2011. That then became 97 for the year 2012. Those people graduated in 2013, in the summer of 2013. And we presently have 100 students enrolled in the third batch. So this actually gave us the opportunity to get some of the best and brightest here in the US and in other parts of the world to come and take a look as to how the project is progressing and then make up their mind if they actually want to become faculty at the Ashoka University. And we've actually been successful at that. So these are some of the faculty at the YIF, and I'm very honored and privileged to say that, in fact, Professor Devesh Kapoor, who shares the panel here, has actually been kind enough to also help us in this endeavor. So we have a few of the very well-known faculty actually joining and teaching us these 6-week-long semester courses at the Young India Foundation. So with that, I think I'd like to move on to the topic that Shell asked me to focus on, which is opportunities and challenges in establishing a new university in India, and the perspective that we've learned over the last 6 to 7 years, I would say. So let's first talk about the opportunities. So I think there was a mention of gross enrollment ratio a couple of times this morning. So what that is the number of kids that actually graduate from high school, and as a ratio, number of kids that join college compared to the number of kids that graduate from high school. So an interesting thing is that the objective that the government is setting for India is to take this ratio, which is approximately 18% presently, to around 30% in 2020. To do that would require $190 billion. And to give you some numbers, the 11th five-year plan actually plans to spend $16.5 billion on higher education only. So that tells you that there is clearly a gap that can only be filled by the private universities, right? Clearly there is an opportunity there. If you talk about the number of students entering the higher education, it is growing at a phenomenal rate. If I quote some numbers, one study actually says that the number of people in the age bracket of 15 to 24 that were actually enrolled in higher education was at 30 million in 2004 and 5 and doubled to 60 million in 2009 and 10. And that number is expected to increase progressively. So clearly there is a need, again reflected by those numbers. There are a few ways that you can become a university in India, and I think it actually is on the concurrent list, which means both the state and the center can actually make sure that the university gets formed. Some of the states are actually passing already private university acts. Haryana, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh are a few examples. We are actually getting formed under the act passed by Haryana. Also, it is interesting, the studies have revealed that Indians are willing to pay more for a higher quality education. One of the studies actually says that in the last 7 years, the average household spend in India on education has gone up by 21%. Last but not the least, the fact that there is inadequate public funding for research overall. I think Professor Khakar gave some numbers, but clearly compared to some of the other countries, we are, as the Consul General pointed out, far behind. So I think, again, there is an opportunity there for the private sector to be able to contribute and make sure that they are able to bridge this gap. So that gives you a feel for the opportunities that exist and why is it that private involvement in universities is the way to go in India as well. I'll now focus on the three challenges, the three broad challenges that also exist that we've learned and surpassed over the last few years. So the first one, of course, is regulatory challenges. What this means is there is a lot of ambiguity and conflicting requirements in cases of various authorities. So for example, there are multiple and often overlapping approvals that are required. In fact, the onus is left to the university to dig out some of these approvals. What are the rules that you have to follow? And many bodies actually have the possibility of vetoing it, which means if, in fact, you did not dig up this rule that also exists, and therefore we will not allow you to actually progress with your project. So that is one of the things that we actually learned over the progress of this project. The other interesting aspect is that there is a disconnect between the education regulators and the other government agencies. So for example, for the setting up of the Ashoka University, we were treated like an industrial project, which means as if you're setting up a factory of sorts, and you had to get the same environmental and pollution clearances that are required for an industrial project. The other interesting aspect of regulations is that, they are restrictive policies for private participation because the education is expected to be only philanthropic in nature. I would like to highlight here that both the YIF and the Ashoka University are philanthropic projects. 12 of us have come together and we are putting private capital in making these projects go forward. We all realize that university building is a capital intensive, but since the profit making is banned, that also is one of the deterrents. There is not enough freedom, over-regulation in fees, sometimes in course content, and even in the faculty salaries is the norm. It's also interesting to mention that there are unclear FDI policies. The government on one hand says 100% foreign direct investment is allowed, while the All India Council on Technical Education says that it is not allowed. Right? So there is that issue as well. And then, of course, there is a poor understanding of the operation cycle overall. Right? Being capital intensive, you have to make sure that you get your approvals in time because the academic session can only begin in a certain month, so you have to make sure that you get your approval before that. If you miss that, then you have to delay your whole project by an year. So these are minor matters, but this is not clear and not given the required importance by the bureaucracy at times. The second interesting challenge for a university is to get faculty, both of quality and quantity. So there is a severe shortage of qualified faculty to meet this rising demand. If I would point out two different institutions, the public institutions are, I would say, in most cases, poorly paid, and therefore they have unmotivated teachers on an average. The promotions are fixed by tenure, and therefore there is no real incentive to perform. Very few, if any, performance-based reviews, and student feedback on how the faculty is doing really accounted for. If you look at the private universities, on the other hand, the teachers are hired at the minimum cost to make sure that you don't spend as much in running the university. In fact, what ends up happening is that you hire a few credible faces for PR purposes, and then you hire a lot of junior-level teachers whose credentials are unimpressive, to say the least. Last but not the least, the challenge is also the marketing and branding. Right? So a lot of the private institutions have actually offered extremely low quality of education, leading to unpromising career, thereby creating a deterrent and creating an issue of credibility for new private institutions, which are actually then given a lot greater scrutiny compared to what is probably required. So those are some of the key challenges that I wanted to throw out as covering the topic that Shell asked me to talk about. So all in all, here is an executive summary of what I covered today, basically saying that there is an opportunity clearly. There are some challenges, but the experience that we've had over the last 6-7 years, I'd like to highlight that tells me that the need and demand is a lot more than the deterrents that are created. And if we really want to put our heads together, we can address this. And Ashoka University is an example in point. I would like to end by saying that there is a soapbox. The conference has been kind enough to allot us a soapbox tomorrow at 7 p.m. So we have a half an hour where I'll present more details about the project and what exactly is the university all about, the Young India Fellowship is all about. So I'd request for those of you who are interested, this is going to be in room 339AB on the 3rd floor at 7 p.m. tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing a few of there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rakesh. Before I ask the next question to Chitta, I wanted to remind everybody that Sweta and Michelle, if you can raise your hands, they are the volunteers here. They've been handing out the cards for you to write your questions. If you already have written a question, send them back to either one of them and they'll give it to me. At the end of the presentations, we'll start taking those questions. So keep your questions going, the flow there. So with that, the next question is to Chitta. It's really framed around in 2008, Indian government announced the establishing of maybe 14 or several innovation universities, which is the closest it has come to the idea of world-class research universities. The idea actually has gone nowhere to my assessment, and one of the main stumbling blocks was apparent lack of funding. what is the appropriate funding model, Chitta, to establish such universities in India? And what are the opportunities and challenges in changing the existing funding model? And the reason I asked this question of Chitta is because he has given a lot of deep thought to this issue, and he has been involved with Indian education system in a number of ways. So Chitta.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be in this panel and have this audience. So already there has been a lot of discussion about the, what is this move? About world-class universities. People have already defined what world-class universities are. And I mean, examples in Texas abound. We have Texas Austin, we have Rice, we have Houston in the making, we have Texas A&M. Unfortunately, India doesn't have any, and India needs them. So the question is, how do we go about making them? And I have these slides with details you don't need to read. It has more details. I am going to just touch on some points. So there are multiple ways we can upgrade the existing universities and IITs, and that's a way to go about it. We could create new private ones. We could create new government ones. And with a 1.237 billion population, and with zero world-class universities at present, India needs all routes. So with their wisdom, the Indian government in 2008, the same document that announced there will be 8 new IITs and 7 new IIMs, listed that they are going to create 14 new quote-unquote world-class universities. They changed the name. They call it innovation universities later. And they even listed the name of 14 places where they want to have. They were very sure that they want to have it in places where faculties will go and so on. So this was proposed in 2008. The document is there, and this has been discussed in many forums. What has happened so far is first a concept note on these universities were prepared. Then a concept note on how to attract good faculty to this place was prepared. Then a bill on this has been laid in the parliament. A parliamentary committee has gone over it. But it is still far away from implementation because none of these talk about, they are like what this should be, but how do you go about making one? And unlike new IITs, which was, they said, okay, we have IIT X, Gandhinagar will have IIT Bombay be a mentor. So they could have mentors, but when you have universities, we don't have any, there are no mentors. So what did India government do? The HRD minister, then HRD minister, Mr. Kapil Sibal, he went around various countries. He came to US, he came to UK, he went to Singapore, Australia to get ideas. And the universities are polite, but they were not saying like in the old days when IITs were made, several institutions were actually volunteering to mentor these IITs. But that kind of mentoring was not volunteered. What they were getting is Yale said, okay, we will train your administrators. And that's not going to make a world-class university if that is the help that was they getting. So they were, I thought they were going a little bit in the wrong way, or I mean, that is a starting point, but there's another way of going about it, and it's finance related. So this is what I want to talk about. So what I suggest is a bottom-up way, and this is what I have in mind. Basically, many of you who are in academia, there are in US especially, NSF and NIH, they call for grants of making this center, 25 million, 50 million, and there are lots of applications, and few of them get it. So imagine India government does something like that. And through that process, it selects 5 founding deans for each of these 14 universities. And these founding deans will be from the top universities in US, UK, Canada, maybe some from India, very good ones. 5, not 1, because I don't think 1 vice chancellor is enough or 1 president is enough. 5 founding deans. And they would be said, okay, see, you are fighting so much to get a 25 million grant from NSF. We will give you a 50 million or 25 million lab to set up. So 5 such labs as a starting research point, and education will grow out of that. So that's the way I think and this would be, I envision that these deans will take leave from their institute, from a very good institute, so they have the links maintained. So instead of the HRD minister going to Yale and asking that, would you mentor this, the Yale faculty will tell their president that, okay, I'm going to India. Would you like a connection with India? I'm sure many presidents would be very happy. They would say, okay, yeah, there is a good connection and doesn't cost us much. So you are able to get 5 mentors, not just 1 mentor that you're looking for and you are kind of rebuffed. But you get 5 mentors each to get this faculty, and that is kind of the details I have. I don't want to go spend too much time on this, but I think you get the idea. And each of these faculty will then go on making this. So funding mechanisms, These funding mechanisms are also tied with, no one mentioned so far, with the Indian government rules. If the funding comes from the central government, then you have many restrictions. The salaries. The salaries, means you are hard pressed to give a salary more than the cabinet secretary. It has to be a very special case. The IIM director can get a higher salary through a different means. Now, similarly about student composition, quotas, and all that stuff. So what I have is a model, a IIT plus IIM model I call. You have one part which is funded by the government, the other part private sources. This part follows the government rules. This part has more freedom. And this is actually happening in many places. I know many universities, they will have 80 seats for engineering. They call 40 seats government colleges. 40 seats are government kind, 40 seats, they call it their free seat, and these are paid seats. So these paid seats, they pay the market value. The free seats go to the free ones. So that kind of model is existing and that can be done. IIM, for example, they earn enough. They charge like 15 to 13 lakh per student, and they make enough from their charges and as well as from their consultancy to run IIMs. So a model which combines government as well as private can work out. So this is what I have. This is the main reason I wanted to show the slide. So think of this two funding mechanisms: central funding F1, other funding F2. So you can use that ratio in terms of faculty. The same ratio, there will be faculty which follow the central government rules. There will be other faculty, you can call them chair faculty, and they're paid as per market rate, whatever they can negotiate, because they are paid from the private money. They don't come under the central government rules. Similarly with students. Students, based on the funding from the government, they are paying as per the government rules in IITs or central universities, and then the other students who are supported by the private funding, they pay their private money. So I think this is possible, and as a starting fiscal parameters, I think the states the states are very excited about having such universities. So the central government can say, okay, we will give you, as a start, we'll give you the money as we are giving new IITs. Plus, each state gives 500 acres that they do for IITs also. And then there is an endowment fund needed. The endowment, the state gets money and gets money from their sources through all lands, plus private, and the central government matches it. Such a model can be, this separation of private and government money and keeping proper track, you can avoid some of the rules of the central government-funded institutions that actually prevent excellence and the free hand. So that's a quick summary. Unfortunately, this government is towards the end, so it may not happen, and there are lots of bills, so this bill may not get passed in this parliament or before this government changes. But good parties in India, many of the good proposals, they carry over to the next government, and I hope many of you are excited about this. I would like your feedback. I would like you to get in touch, and we can push the next government, when it happens, to really make these 14 universities, to make a start on this 14, because with 1.237 billion population, we need many, many ways of creating top-notch universities in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chita. Sudhir, you have been part of a number of great universities. My question to you is, and you're in fact building IIT Gandhinagar from scratch. How must the internal governance change to foster world-class research universities?
When we talk about world-class universities, we must not forget that a long time back, we did have world-class universities in India. Let's not forget Nalanda, which for almost 7 centuries remained a place where the rest of the world looked up to. In fact, decline of Nalanda started around 12th century. Before Nalanda, for about 10 centuries, Takshila was a great place. That is where Chanakya did great work. That is where a lot of medicine, a lot of surgery, a lot of fantastic work happened in India. And I believe that if we Indians could do it 2,000 years back, there is no reason in 21st century we cannot do it. So to me, that is a very, very simple, very appropriate resolution that we can do it and we must do it. What it will take, and to focus particularly on the question that Shal has asked, what do we need to do in terms of internal governance? I think a few things are very obvious. One is, I think our universities tend to be very exclusive. We need to be more inclusive. We need to include more people. We need to have very wide cross-section of stakeholders. We must involve a lot of people who are not just necessarily inside the university, but people outside the university. They must have a stake in it. They must worry about that university. They must contribute to that university. We must have a very clear idea about using discretion for merit. India is going through a very interesting phase where word discretion means corruption. It is very, very interesting that if you read the newspapers, people are saying that, oh, we must take away discretion. We must not allow discretion, because a lot of discretion is being abused and misused by politicians and bureaucrats. I cannot believe we running Indian institutions, Indian educational institutions, and not use discretion. Have we run out of integrity to such an extent that we will not have discretion in evaluating merit? I'm told that there are systems now in India, not fortunately in my institute or with any of the institutes I am associated with, where there are very detailed matrices, how many papers you need in order to get promotion, what you need to do, how many points for what, things like that. Why? Because no human should use his brain. There should be a computer where you put all the data, you put a resume of a person, and the computer should tell you at the end of it that his score is so many points, and beyond so many points you get the promotion. Why? Because if you use discretion, you will be dishonest. To my mind, we must, as academics, we must resist those kind of pressures to take away the discretion. We must be able to say, this person is more meritorious than this person. We use that all the time with our students. We don't give everybody an A grade. We cannot give similarly A grade to all of our faculty. They have to be different. And therefore, I think we must create internal systems where with tremendous integrity, we will use discretion. I think second thing that we need to do in an internal governance is flexibility. We tend to, again, try to govern the universities by rules because I don't want to be accused, because I don't want to be unpleasant. I think Indians tend to be very sensitive to criticism. Indians tend to be very sensitive to being told that you are not up to the mark. And therefore, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the person who denied you something. So here is the rule number 5. Subclause 3, you don't meet that requirement, therefore you don't get this money. Thank you very much. I think we need to bring that flexibility back. We need to have appetite for new experiments. We need to accept failures. We must take risk. You cannot create any institution, you cannot create any business, you cannot create anything which is outstanding. Nobody ever imagined climbing Everest and not having risk involved in it. If you are going to create a great university, you have to take the risk and you have to accept failures. I will just touch 2 more points. Our faculty recruitment and retention follows civil service system. You hire a young officer, a young boy or girl, you make him police officer, you make him an administrative officer, and in a year or 2 years, typically 2 years, you give him a security of job. Why? Because if he catches a crook, he should not have to worry about losing his job. Because if he is insecure, he will not catch the crook. We cannot follow the same thing for universities. Unfortunately, we are following that. I cannot imagine you deciding a faculty member's recruitment based on 40-minute interview, 30-minute interview, 20-minute interview, and on 1-year probation, telling him that now you are for life, we hope you do well. That cannot be a system. I think we need a lot of internal changes to accept that civil service model for faculty recruitment and retention is going to lead you somewhere. Some of our universities are doing very well, and that is because some of our people are self-driven. That is because some of them are so good that they work despite the administration. They work despite the system. We need everybody to work. Other than that, there is no hope as far as I see. Finally, I would say, at least in the IITs context, and perhaps in most Indian universities context, we show tremendous integrity in dealing with student matters. Can we follow exactly the same level of integrity in dealing with faculty matters, in recruitment, in promotions? Can we stop the territorial wars, this department, that department, pure physics versus applied physics, high energy physics versus experimental physics? You know, there is so much that we are dissipating our energies on. Can we just say that we would like to maintain highest level of integrity in faculty matters as we do in the student matters? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sudhi, for such refreshing thoughts. Our last question to this panel is to Devesh. Devesh has studied this issue at length, and Devesh, could you give your insights about regulatory or policy changes that needed to be changed to create world-class research universities in India? And I know Rakesh talked a lot about the challenges Ashoka University faced. So perhaps some of those have been covered, but I think some insights from you will be really helpful.
Thanks. My sort of remarks, I'll sort of focus on sort of 4 questions. Why we sort of regulate, who should regulate, what should we be trying to sort of regulate, and how. Now, sort of Indian higher education, the why, it depends on the goals that you have. And the goals are scale, access, cost, and quality. And there is no way that you can meet all these goals at the same time. Quality is costly, and if you scale up, that's also very expensive, and you just don't have the faculty. So you'll have to try and triangulate between these multiple goals. Now, the regulatory system of higher education in India, to put it very, very mildly, is a massive mess. The range of regulators, you have the University Grants Commission, you have Parliament, state legislatures, you have AICTE, a regulator that has become increasingly important precisely because of the failures of the other parts of the regulatory system is the Indian Supreme Court. I would argue we've done a paper looking at all higher education decisions of the Supreme Court since independence, and it's very clear. That is now the de facto regulator of Indian higher education, precisely because of the failures of the other parts of the regulatory system. Now, why is that the case? Partly, I think it's the case that the policy-making organs, which were the original functions of the regulators, essentially degenerated into rent-seeking organs. Between 1/3 to half of the 32,000 colleges private in India now, between 1/3 and half are owned by politicians. The same politicians who are also part of the regulatory process. Wherever you have business interests in an area where you are also the lawmaker, the fact that there will be a conflict of interest is hardly surprising. We have a process where the new head of the UGC is a person whose single distinguishing characteristic is that he's ultimately completely supine, a person who has no academic record, but will sign on to everything that the key politicians ask him to do. And he was appointed by the Prime Minister, who goes and laments on the quality of Indian higher education, but for political reasons, appoints the same person who would not get a job in a talk of not a major university, in a minor American university. These are the harsh realities of what regulation has become. One of the broader reasons that this has become so bad is that in the 1950s, the idea was that the range of regulators would be around the professions, the Medical Council of India, the Bar Council of India, the Institute of Architects, so that the professions should be self-governing. And that, I think, is a very laudable way in which professions should be. They know what are their standards. They should be the ones who should set those standards. But what happened from the 1980s, that the profession organizations got into not just setting standards, but by approving new private colleges. So there was money to be made, which meant that the internal governance of India's professional bodies, which are not part of the state, are now extremely inept and corrupt because there's a huge amount of money to be made in the approval of licenses. So if in the early 90s we stopped the license Raj in industries, we shifted that Raj to higher education. And what you find is that we have a sort of system where you could argue, why is it that in the 50s, universities like Allahabad University, BHU, Rajasthan University, Bombay University, Calcutta University, were actually very good universities. India had more Nobel Prizes before independence than after independence. And one must ask why. I think unless we understand and put higher education in the context of the shifts in India's politics, the fact is that higher education was the preserve of the upper caste. And as lower caste parties came to power, they saw these institutions as the bastions of upper caste power. And therefore, they were determined to destroy the bastions of upper caste power. That is a singular reason why you see a Lucknow University or a Patna University, how from the 70s, 80s onwards, they were completely undercut. This is not by happenstance, it's by design, right? And the fact is that if you talk to you said the civil service rules, the MHRD has babus whose idea of higher education is to run it like a civil service. When the people who make these laws, who make policy, have so little idea about higher education itself, why do we expect that these policies would be great? That's all the experience that they have. Yet the amount of power they wield is extraordinary for a system that is now so large. You cannot micromanage 60 million students from Delhi. You simply can't. Yet the way the system is run is as if a few of these babus, the secretary and the joint secretary, are the ones who know everything about everything. And that simply can't be the case. And my sort of thing now is that, look, any type of regulation in India where you regulate on the input side, that will be gamed. It will be gamed by the provider and money will be paid. So the only way that Indian higher education works is where you regulate not on the input side, but on the output side, right? So you say, like over here, you say, look, I don't care which law school you take a degree from, but you have to pass a bar council test, right? So we say that, look, if you want to be a doctor, there are some minimal standards that all doctors need to know. And I don't care if you studied in X or Y, but you have to pass a certain exam, right? At least that gives a certain degree of it doesn't say how good the doctor is, but it says he's not a terrible, he at least knows a little bit. We now have studies that show that on average, a quack in UP and Bihar gives as good advice on as doctors who take an MBBS-like degree. There is no statistical difference in the quality of advice given by a quack now in UP and Bihar than by someone who has a degree from the new medical colleges. So very, very clearly, our regulation is completely failing because those who are the regulators themselves, they are not there to care for higher education. Most of them have got those roles because they make some money and they're linked to certain politicians. My own sense is, if you ask the question, if we just wiped out these higher regulatory, these institutions of sort of regulation, would India be worse? My argument would be no. Thank you.
Thanks, Devesh. We have a lot of questions from the audience. If there are any other questions, please, this would be a good time to give your questions to Shweta and Michelle, who are at the back of the room. So it seems like this panel at one level agrees that India does need a lot of world-class research universities. I don't think there's any difference of opinion on this issue. In fact, Devang and others might believe that IITs are already well on their way to becoming world-class research universities. I think between Rakesh and Devesh, we clearly believe that there are significant structural issues How we go about solving them and what can we do, obviously is a separate debate altogether, but there are some structural issues. So at this time, I'm going to start taking audience questions to make sure we address the questions that are on top of your minds. One is actually sort of more fundamental question going to the Indian society. It's sort of, I'm taking a few questions together and melding them in one place, which is this, some people are still not sure if this model of world-class comprehensive research university, in fact, is still relevant in Indian society, where the parents really want their kids to get a job, well-paying job, therefore engineering is the right way to go and medicine is the right way to go. Why do we care about this liberal arts thinking or humanities or social sciences? And related question is, again, going to this basic thesis of world-class research universities is, while it might be good for research for in big towns and innovation in large industrial problems, but how does the rural India benefit from world-class research universities? So perhaps if you can address that question, I'll open this question to the whole panel. I mean, I'm not going to direct it to one person. So any volunteers to go first? Sudhir?
I don't think there is a contradiction in what you're saying. If India is going to solve its rural problems, its poverty problems, if young people are going to get good jobs, you will need to give them good education. It is very clear that education is a higher order thing than training. And I think most parents may or may not understand it, but we who are in the business of education, we certainly understand it. And therefore, I have no difficulty in imagining that somebody getting good education would certainly find a better job, would certainly be a better tool for solving the problems of poverty or otherwise.
So let me just say that engineering is no longer a really very good career to be in unless you have gone to a good school. You know, I've heard that students graduating from very poor colleges may get a salary as low as 6,000 rupees a month, and a plumber may get 12,000 rupees a month. On the contrary, now there are a lot of opportunities for students or for graduates who are good in English, who can draw, who can design. I think there's a great shortage of such people, and it's become extremely difficult to get admission, for example, into the arts program of St. Xavier's College in Bombay, or where you can get a good education in history or literature, because these people are now in much greater demand. Just in case you didn't know, there are 1 million engineers graduating every year in India, compared to 74,000 graduating every year in the US. So there's a huge oversupply of engineers right now.
I'll just give a quick perspective. Another point is, if you just calculate the money spent in coaching in Kota or in various places, that money itself can create several world-class universities. Similarly, if you calculate the amount of money people spend in going abroad, that itself can create, it will be enough to create several very good universities. So money is there.
May I?
Yeah.
So I'll throw a different perspective, right? So my response would be, so the first question is, parents don't think that world-class research universities are required. So I would say, in fact, without pointing out to any particular generation, the country is at a crossroad which shows that what we've done in the last 50 years hasn't worked, right? So we have to do something different. The second thing is, if you look at the world today, it is almost impossible that you can become an expert by not having an interdisciplinary knowledge today, right? To become a good engineer also demands that you understand what is happening in psychology, what is happening in the social sector, and so on. Therefore, a broader-based education is the call of the times, right? So that is the second comment I'd make to the first question. And the second one being that, does it help rural India? In fact, look around you. The history has actually shown us that the Western world is actually developed based on the Industrial Revolution, based on the technology and innovation that has actually happened. So I think there is some merit in saying that research, not for the sake of just finding, particles that you will never actually visibly see, but research which actually brings value, like the cell phone, which has brought value and significantly changed the way communication is done in India, can actually help both solve the poverty problem of India, the education problem of India, which is actually going to go a long way in helping the situation that we face back home.
Devesh.
I think there is a point. I think it is the case that India needs not A or B, but A and B. But I do think if you look at the case of India's agricultural universities, we all talk of the role of the MITs in helping the IITs. I think we forget that the real, perhaps even bigger contribution of American universities to India was the land-grant universities that worked with creating the Indian agricultural universities, Punjab agricultural universities, Pantnagar, and so on, and how they were absolutely fundamental in the Green Revolution, because that's where the seeds that came from Mexico in wheat and from the Philippines in rice were adapted to Indian conditions. They adapted the agricultural extension system of American agricultural-led research universities, and that's how the Green Revolution spread. India's agricultural universities have completely collapsed. The public agricultural extension system has completely collapsed. Whatever research is now being done in areas like GM, cotton, etc., is coming from the private sector. The idea that the one thing actually that helps the poor, especially poor women the most, is actually milk is the single biggest rural product that helps poor like women. India has become the highest producer of milk. Yields are very low, but if you ask a question on any of these conferences, does anyone know a single thing about the veterinary colleges? You cannot have a country which has the highest number of farm animals where you have not even one veterinary college, forget university, college that is worth thinking about. And that serves your poor way more, frankly, than most of the things that we talk about.
Thanks, Devesh. So next sort of next set of questions, again, what I'm doing is bringing several questions together, is around the issue of faculty. When we talk about research universities, when we talk about building this whole university base, how do you fuel this university system? You need to attract, I think everybody has said, world-class faculty. Where do these faculties get trained? How do you attract? And Sudhir, you mentioned they are sort of managed through the civil services rule book. So how do you sort of attract and retain? So this question again is to all the panelists about addressing this whole basic faculty question, because ultimately faculty ignites the mind, faculty promotes and mentors. So how do you do that? And I know all IITs, all Indian institutions are currently facing a significant crunch in attracting and retaining smart faculty. So does anybody want to go first? Prabhat.
I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I don't think that is a patently Indian question in terms of faculty, recruitment of faculty, training of faculty, retention, development. That is as much an issue in the United States as it is anywhere else. Faculty are the most expensive component of running a university today. I mean, if you look at fields such as ours, science and engineering in particular, you are looking at anywhere from $600,000 to maybe $2 million of startup that goes with every faculty member. Think about a 6% turnover in faculty every year. Look at a faculty base of about 500 faculty, and you're looking at replacing 30 faculty members at an average of about $1 million. So that's $30 million of expenditures that you incur every year anyway. All right. So this is something that one has to look at from a perspective of how do universities actually attract and retain the best talent. And institutions have found their own ways of doing it. We experimented with an idea of constellation faculty. I mean, if you wanted to have certain areas in which you put the stake in the ground and said that this is an area we absolutely have to build up, then let's create a constellation. We'll hire senior people and we'll hire junior people. And they, in turn, will generate enough enthusiasm and excitement around a particular field that they'll cause their faculty, other faculty at the university to be attracted to this as well. So a variety of different concepts have been tried and experimented with here in the United States. I think where India really falls short is in terms of actually being able to attract well-trained people back to the nation to serve in the capacity that they're expected to. Any administrator or leader will tell you that to run a world-class operation, you really need to work on the principle of 4 Ps. And these are the people, the establishing the programs, building the platforms for these individuals, and then finally establishing partnerships. And you heard about this from President Khator this morning as well. All right.
Yeah. Recruiting faculty is undoubtedly the most important thing for any great university. And IITs do face a challenge. But let me just say that, it's all the IITs are in fact getting outstanding people to join. There are enough young people very interested in going and working in India, and IITs are perhaps the best place to work if you're in science and engineering. To just give you an example, we typically take, out of 100 applications, we may make maybe 4 or 5 offers of the 100 applications that we get. So there is a great deal of enthusiasm for people to come and work in places like IIT. In spite of the so-called government salaries and so forth, we have had now, as I said from the start, outstanding people have come. And, over the last 5 years, we have hired 165 assistant professors. 100% of them have international experience. A large number of them have got at least one of their degrees from one of the IITs. And I don't see this as as something that is overwhelming. We are working hard at it. We are not using money as a way to attract people into the institution. Our teachers came at the same salaries that were being paid to all the faculty. They were really outstanding. And we see our students now coming back and joining from the best of places. So I don't see that as a sort of deal breaker as such. But we do have to be responsive. We do have to create an environment where these young people who are coming back can succeed. And we do have to give the kind of resources for the faculty to build up their labs and so that they can do the research that they want to. I should say that we have now reached a position where there are many established people, not many, but at least a few established people in the US who are very interested in coming and moving back to India, because the argument that they use is the kind of impact that they can have in a system like India is far greater than what they would have had working in US, where there may be 100 other people doing a similar thing. So I think it is a challenge, but it's not insurmountable, and there is there's a big stream of people going back. And it's not just to the IITs, but also to ICERs and ISC and so forth. There's a competition. Every good faculty member, every good faculty applicant gets offers from everybody. And there's, across the IITs, a great competition to attract the best people.
I want to, IIT Bombay and IIT Bangalore are probably in a different situation where they get a lot of applications, but I'm not sure that's the case. There are lots of new universities that have been created, and there is indeed a challenge to find faculty. I think actually the solution goes to the institutes, the good institutes that already exist, to focus more on research and more on post-graduation and PhD and research. I was challenging him during lunch that why doesn't, as IIT Bombay, why not he make a goal like Caltech that 50% of our students will go to grad school? Now 10% go. That would be a challenge. IIT Bombay in 1950s, when IITs were created, they were created to make engineers. But now, IIT Bombay as the leader, IIT Bangalore as the leader, they should create 50% of the faculty who will go around to other IITs and NITs, and they shouldn't be happy. I was very disappointed every day seeing messages in the newspaper, oh, this IIT guy got this crore salary. That's the message that you go to IIT, you'll get crores of salaries. It's not the message that you go to IIT, like I say, Caltech, you will become a good researcher, you will do something really great for the society. No, you will get a big salary. I mean, that's the message that is coming across, and I'm challenging him, and I'm also challenging other IIT directors. And I'll give you one positive point. IISER, the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, there are 5 created to balance Indian Institute of Science. They don't have training and placement, period. They don't have training and placement. 80% of the student graduates go on to graduate school. I hope one of these 15 IITs directors take this as a challenge and modulate, change and try to mentor their students from day one so that half of them go to grad school and go to research and go to academia, go to research and change India. Thank you.
Yes, Sudhir.
I think when we talk about India, we must recognize that every statement you make about India is true, and exactly opposite statement is also true. When you say that there is a shortage of faculty, it is true. But it is also true that there is no shortage of faculty. Okay? It depends on the perspective. It depends on the situation, right? I entirely agree with Devang. The quality of faculty that I'm recruiting today is absolutely top rate, absolutely no difficulty, right? Yet, is there no shortage? Yes, there is a shortage. What exactly is happening? One of the challenges that today we are facing, and some of that was described today, when you talk about Indian institutions, you are talking about totally different systems. On one side, you are talking about institutions like IITs and IISERs. On the other side, you are talking about other universities. And they are so different from each other that any discussion on a platform like this, it keeps going like a pendulum from left to right, right to left kind of situation. And we must recognize that. One of the problems that we have today is that there is no continuum. We need a continuum. We have 2 discrete sets. This set, very autonomous, very quality conscious, doing very well, taking a lot of pride, its graduates are doing well, its faculty is putting in their best. And here is another system, highly distrustful, vice chancellor, doubtful integrity, doubtful credentials. Somebody was mentioning about one of the leaders of a top agency in India from this panel. You know, so we have such a diverse sets, 2 discretes. I think one of the big problems that we have today, which we need to solve somehow, and I have no answer to that, is we need a continuum. We need, if you don't get here, you can get slightly lower, slightly lower, slightly lower. It is not that if you don't get there, you go all the way down. And that, to me, is a bigger problem. And unless your universities have a continuum, this problem will remain. Because if you are coming out of this lower lot, if you are a faculty in this lower lot, you don't see any hope. The environment is just not conducive to any scholarship. The environment is not for any excellence. There is something totally different world. That world I and Devang cannot even perhaps understand and will be totally alien in that environment.
And last comment from Devesh.
Well, I just want to underscore the point made by Chitta. I think it's a terrible idea for the IITs and IIMs to emphasize how much money their graduates are going to make and look. 10 IIT Kanpur guys are offered 1.5 crores. It sends 2 terrible signals. It sends a signal that the meaning of education is solely can be reduced by the money that you make. And no great university can ever be great if that is the purpose. And that is how it defines its purpose, even though that comes across de facto, and even though that's what the media picks up. Why release those salaries? Same with the IIMs. You hardly ever hear an IIM thing saying, look, so many of our alumni actually went on to do PhDs. Very rarely do you see that type of figure. But what you see is the salary they got from X or Y company. Just to move on to the faculty shortage. You know, one thing is, and I think you're absolutely right, that the total number of students of all IIT combined is less than 0.32% of all Indians to higher education students. Sometime we should think of that 99.37%. That is where the country will take the country, and that is what will bring it down. The IITs can do a lot, but you need a lot more engines to pull this very, very large train, right? The number of people trained in economics in India with PhDs that are of reasonable quality is about 15. The total number of Indians we have estimated around the world who get PhDs that you can recruit potentially is 60. We produce for a country of 1.2 billion, 75 PhDs in economics that you can recruit as faculty. Look at statistics, look at mathematics. Forget agriculture and veterinary science, where we go down first, right? What I think is, unless we think of higher education as something more broad-based, something that reaches now not to that 1%, but tries to reach out to at least the 20%, because that 20% is 300 million people, and that's a lot of people, right? Otherwise, all the attention, all the resources, all the politics will be around the key institutions. Let's have more like, reservation there, all of those things. But we must try and think, what is exactly happening in those 32,000 colleges? What is interesting? Sanskrit. Indians now have to come to the US to study and do serious academic work in Sanskrit. I cannot think of a bigger indictment of our higher education system, that a country whose civilizational language was Sanskrit cannot promote a scholarship in that language.
Just very quick comment. My friend will be delighted to hear that I have 124 students learning Sanskrit in this current semester. and I have two professors of Sanskrit in my institute. Second, I would just like to only make a statement that IITs do not throw glamour at 1.5 crore rupees. It is just the press, and it's a big nuisance for us as much as it is for anybody else.
Great. With that, I would like you to join me in thanking the panel. It's been a wonderful discussion. I know you learned a lot about the perspectives from various panelists. I hope you are energized and inspired to do something, because the opportunities clearly outweigh the challenges. Thank you so much, and I think Pradeep has a few.
Of course, there's never enough time to not only hear the wisdom that our esteemed panelists have out here, but on the other side, not enough time to even absorb it. So thank you very much, each and every one of you. And on behalf of the IIT alumni of Greater Houston, we thank you, and I have a small token in a large box for all of you.
How do I do this? I'll let you open and show one. Just give it. Yeah, just give it.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry about that. Here you go. Thank you very much.
I think you can do it. You're the only one who can do it.
I got the 50%, but I have very good numbers. Much better than any IIT.
Like make Caltech as your model. Much better than mine.